here's my theory on how humans have evolved over time, and the place vote sizing fits into that evolution, and also a little bit of the spirituality of the whole meaning of life and what purpose we can find in it. So we're going to begin with what I call evolution of democracy. And it's basically going to involve 4 aspects. The first aspect being technology, which is the stuff that humans have evolved over the history of time to aid them. And then from technology, what we end up with is organization of humans, that we use this technology to better organize ourselves and then to grow into our environment, population-wise. After that, with the growth of population, even with the technology that's at hand, we encounter conflict, which is just basic fundamental hypocrisies and contradictions and inequalities, injustices that come out of the fact that some people have more technology and are able to use more technology than others, and the frustration that's encountered. And then out of that frustration, what we always end up with is a evolution of the voting group, that you find a way to include those people who are disenfranchised with the system, so that instead of violent revolution, they are able to cohabitate and live together. And then those 4 just form a cycle, around and around and around, evolving. So let's take a look at the first steps, which would be more or less ape-man, caveman, whatever you want to call it. And the first technology that they encountered, or we encountered, is language. So that, more or less, language would be something along the lines of, that's mine. Or to connotate, Glickman, this village is Glickman, this area is Glickman, this cave, Glickman. So that would form a clan of similar speaking people, with a hierarchy, chief, decider, but they'd all basically speak to each other and communicate through spoken words. From these clans and this connotation, we came out of it with private property. The chief would have some stuff, shaman would have some stuff, the wives, the families, and that private property created conflict. But in order to resolve that, there was a king. And the king would decide on behalf of the people, and that went on for a good time, a good long time. But then eventually the humans happened upon written words, and written words was whatever they could say and express in a more permanent form that they could somehow convey to each other without having to actually be there or believe in the other person. And that evolved into a feudal system. With the feudal system came a surplus. So we'd have the ancient societies, the riverbed societies, enormous societies actually, all using writing, hieroglyphics, knots, whatever they could to document who owned what. And out of that organization, there was surplus. There was people who could have some time on their hands, or have some nicer, really nice houses and servants and all those other things, because that's what they wanted. And then this created a conflict, this surplus. And it was on a large scale. So they would not allow for one king or one queen or even one family to just write everything down and say everything they had to say. And out of that conflict came senators, which is just people who aren't all necessarily related, people who aren't necessarily one of the family, who could get involved in the decision-making process and represent constituents, or at least represent areas. And with the senators and the writing, that worked again for a nice long time, and then came the idea of the zero. And the zero revolutionized a lot of stuff. It broke down the idea of some hierarchy being around that was was only to be found in the hieroglyphs and the numbers and the important words that these important people were saying. It was a way that people could see each other as being parts of machinery. And alongside we had population growth. So out of that came some kind of caste system where you had warriors, you had untouchables, you had kings, senators, businessmen, and all kinds of tradespeople, and all of them would know their place, and they would see themselves as one of, like a piece of a machine. And from that, we got into a bit of not knowing yourself. And that the conflict came out of that was this search of religion, search of meaning. If I am just a 1 or a 0, then who can give me meaning? Who should say that I have a more everlasting love than the other guy? So that was a conflict. And out of all that, with the 0, we had a Congress. Because 0 made it much easier to add numbers than X's and I's or knots in a string. So people could say, listen, I need to be represented. I'm a 1. My family is an 8. My city is a 1,520. So it wasn't hard to add up these numbers. And so they had a Congress. It was much larger. They had all kinds of people representing all kinds of other people throughout the lands. And then the technology that was brought was the printing press. And that formulated dissent, because what we published in Words was all about these conflicts and this never-ending search for meaning. And came out of that was empirical, which this uncertainty just drew people to expand, conquer, see themselves as better, believe in what they were reading as a definition of who they were. And so out of that we had all kinds of empirical with bureaucracy, we had laws, we had much more business, cross borders, international, stuff like that. And then, in order to resolve all those conflicts that were happening, they decided to include all the wealthy men of the dominant race, which was usually white men. So they would basically be in control. And they felt good about themselves because they felt they were in charge. So that went on for a while until industry came along. And with all the other evolutions in technologies, there was a feeling of being one of a representing a certain geography, a land, and nationalism was born out of that technology, and it was much more oriented towards trade deals and international business because of all the technology they had than before. And the problem with that was that the individuality, which is that people did not feel as if they were anything but this or that, the other. And there was a big search for if we could rewrite the rules, if we're so much in charge, if all we are is a nation of people, then what shall we do? And because of that technology and because of that mindset, they came up with everybody votes. Everybody's entitled to a vote. And everybody's almost equal in terms of being able to express themselves politically and socially and culturally. And we're going to reinvent ourselves from whatever voices are inside. And that worked. It allowed humans to grow and grow and grow, as always. And the technology that came out of that, all that growth, was the computers and the information age, which we're living in now. And that means with all the instant communication, there's a feeling of globalism. And the problem that we face now is if it's a global situation here and we're all responsible, then what are we doing about the depleting resources and the pollution and the suffering? And that's creating conflict. And people feel frustrated once again when they think that they're not in charge of the world, that everyone else is in charge of the world. And that's where I feel that the next step is going to be vote sizing, which is using this computer technology to bring more people into the realm of responsibility and self-reliance, or just reliance. And this is where it leaves us now, with a situation where computers are going to be involved to enfranchise those many people who just feel that there's no, they're not being heard, they're not influencing the future, and they're not about to start thinking socially if the society is not thinking about them. So that's basically using technology and the current system of organization, the conflict, to change the voting group. Okay. Now, I want to take just a little bit of a look here at this last group and the dynamics, which is basically the king did not want to. There's always a fight. This process does not happen easily. So the king does not want to share power with senators, but eventually it was so many, such a force, that he decided to, or she decided to. There was no other solution. The senators had the same feeling about a Congress. Congress did not want to share power, and so on and so on and so on. And every time the debates, because there were debates, there were discussions, would fall along the lines of, listen, we're doing okay with the level of democracy we have now. The problem is not the level of democracy. The problem is the actual people making the decisions. In other words, look to your senators to make wiser decisions. Focus on them to do things better. Focus on the men. Focus on the Congress. Focus on the king. And it's a upwards-looking track, which is encouraged by those above. And every time the solution was, no, the downwards process, involve more and more people in the process is how we do it. And why do I say this? Because it's the exact same argument given against vote sizing, which is one person, one vote. It's the end. It's all we got. It's what we're meant to do. And once again, I just think that argument will be knocked off, because the technology will enable us to allow vote sizing. Because every time, whether it was language, it was writing, zeros, or whatever, these things were used to share power, to get the power to be shared. Because it's very important that people feel like they're part of society. It didn't change the political system so much when women got to vote. What changed was society, and women, and men, and everybody changed on that point, not just who got elected. So the interesting point to me is, okay, let's say we do vote sizing. Let's say we involve computers in the process. Let's say the computers allow more and more and more people to share this planet, maybe share other planets. Where are we going to go? How far can we go with this, of involving technology in this group decision-making process? And the other point is, once we reach the end of that, once we utilize computers and we have what we think are the best models in place for these decision-making processes, what will our society look like? And how can we improve upon that? Even with, let's say, computers, population is going to grow. There's going to be conflict. There's going to be hypocrisy. There's no easy solution. So the spirituality part of this is that all of these evolutions of democracy, all these times we look to each other and we embrace each other and we listen to each other and we grow up together and we mature and we have more and more technology and more wonderful things in our lives. At every step, we don't seem to do much consciousness expanding. We don't seem to change much of that. For example, there's many more people walking the planet than there was hundreds of thousands of years ago, but they're still eating a lot of meat. They're still putting animals through tremendous suffering. They're still punishing the planet. They're not respecting life any more than necessarily they used to way back when. So the question is exactly how the place for vote sizing in this is just to let more and more people find their way to live together. I used to think, hopefully one day it would mean a raisingness of consciousness and an enlightenment. But the fact is maybe there isn't. Maybe all there is ways for us just to keep growing as a population and expanding. And maybe that's what we're meant to do. Maybe that's the fantastic thing, is that we have found a way to grow up together and to expand and fill our little part of the universe with each other, with thought, with consciousness. But I would like to think that the idea behind vote sizing, which is to empower the needy, reflects in the future to change people and to change consciousness so that even with a computer, they are more attuned to those more needy than themselves. For example, animals and nature and rocks and trees and water and amoeba and what have you. I would like to think that that's the spiritual direction of all this. But there's no guarantees. And for the time being, it's better than just waiting for the pot to boil over with resentment and people who don't respect the vote. When no one respects the vote, then there's going to be a bloody revolution. So it's better to bring them into the fold and bring everyone together than to just have it so that we wait until it's almost too late. And who knows? Maybe this is the direction that we're all meant to go, is with this using computers to help with our group decision-making process. Thanks for your time.